Hey everyone, welcome back to my channel. So today I'm going to be setting up my journal for the month of May, and of course I'm using my bullet journal by Art and Olive as always, and you can use my code ARTandBujos to get 10% off, which also helps to support me and my channel. And first I'm just going to do a little flip through of my April setup as always, and I really love this theme. I think it was quite fun and a bit different from what I usually do, but it was a bit more time intensive since there was a lot of drawing involved. So for this month I decided on a very simple theme instead. Now, I still had one more weekly spread to do in this setup, but I have already posted that in my community tab if you want to check it out, and then I'm starting my May setup on the next 2 pages. For the colors, I wanted to go for a very dreamy pastel color palette, so I chose 2 purple tones, 2 kind of peachy oranges, and 2 rose tones. And as you can see, I chose a lighter and a darker version of each one because I wanted to do the outlines of the doodles with the darker version and then fill them in with a lighter one. Lastly, I'm also going to be using a gold gel pen for some accents, and all of the products are going to be listed in the description in case you're curious. Starting off with the first page, as always I'm making a small calendar just to have an overview of the whole month. And first I'm just coloring in the background for the weekdays on the top with the light purple. And then as for the spacing, the days are 2 spaces wide, and then I'm writing the dates into 1 space and leaving another one empty in between the weeks. And then I'm writing the weekdays on the top with the darker purple and the dates underneath with a black pen, but you could also write them with the same purple if you want. Then I'm just adding some lines in between the weeks with the 3 darker shades, and I'm crossing out the empty days with the gold pen. For the cover page, I wanted to do a circular border around the design to give it a bit more structure. So I'm first using the lightest purple to trace around the circle I marked out before, and I'm just turning my journal to make it a bit easier to follow the sketch. Then I'm using a bit of washi tape for the title to protect the background from any color, and then I'm using the darker colors for the outlines of the clouds like I mentioned, and then the lighter colors later to fill them in. And I'm alternating between the 3 colors I chose, and I'm also spacing out the clouds pretty evenly and varying the shape and position of them. Some of them are kind of behind each other, and then some are just on their own, and I basically just tried to fill out the circle pretty evenly. Next, I'm filling out the clouds with the lighter version of each shade, and I tried not to go over the same space too many times because it can make the color look a bit more dark and a bit blotchy sometimes. So especially for the purple, I tried not to layer the color too much, but for the other ones it wasn't too much of a big deal, so I would maybe just recommend testing it out before you try it out. Next up, I went in with my gold gel pen to add a moon on the very top and a few bigger and smaller stars, and I tried not to add too many because otherwise it can look a bit chaotic, but just enough to fill in any of the smaller gaps. Lastly, I just removed the washi tape and then I wrote the title with the darker purple in just a very simple font into the middle of the circle. So that is it for these first 2 pages, and let's move on to my habit trackers. For the title, I first used that same method with the washi tape, and I just placed it into the middle on the top where I wanted to write the title later on. And then I'm decorating the sides with some more clouds, and I just made them a bit smaller than on the cover page so that they fit a bit better, but otherwise everything was just about the same. So I first started with the outlines again and then filled in the clouds with the lighter shades later. And I think this theme was just very fun because the clouds are super easy and quick to draw, and they also just kind of remind me of cotton candy because of the colors, so that was definitely very fun as well. And yeah, definitely let me know what you think in the comments as well. I also ended up deciding to add a border so that the title has a bit more structure. So I used the lighter purple and a ruler to add a rectangular border all around, and I just left out the spaces where the clouds overlapped the border. And then in the middle, as you can see, I already added the title with the darker purple again, and lastly I'm just decorating the rest of the space with the gold gel pen. Moving on to my habit trackers, I first colored in the background for the titles with the lighter purple, and this time I made 6 daily habit trackers in 2 rows of 3 next to each other so that I have more space on the bottom to add more decorations. And for the borders, I made the first 3 on the top with the orange and then the other ones underneath with the pink to incorporate all of the colors. Now, as for the spacing, each habit tracker is 7 spaces wide and 8 spaces tall, with the title taking up 1 space on the top, and then I left 1 space empty underneath it, so then the actual sections are 6 spaces tall. I also left 2 spaces in between each habit tracker horizontally and 1 vertically, which ends up working out perfectly for my bullet journal. Next up, I colored in the first row of each section as a background for the weekdays, and for the top I used the lighter version of the orange, and then for the bottom I used the lighter version of the pink. And then I wrote the weekdays themselves in the darker shade, so the orange on the top and the pink on the bottom again. Then I wrote the titles themselves on the top with the darker purple, and this month I'm tracking the same ones as usual, so getting up before 9 AM, doing my morning routine, doing some stretches, studying Korean, doing some 3D practice, and doing my nighttime routine. And lastly, I just crossed out the days from April and June with the gold gel pen again. As always, I also wanted to include a few weekly habits on the bottom, so I first colored in the background with the light purple again, and I just left 1 space empty between the habits for a bit more white space. I did mess up the length for the first one a bit, but I corrected it later on with a white acrylograph, and then I wrote the titles with the darker purple, and this month I'm tracking doing my weekly reset, practicing piano, making my weekly spreads, and having a little self-care day. And then to track them, I also added 5 circles with the gold gel pen on the right, and I can either fill them out if I complete it or cross them out if I don't. Like I mentioned before, I wanted to have a bit more space on the bottom for a few more clouds, and I think it just creates a really nice border together with the top and the title. So again, I just added a few more clouds, and I really enjoyed the doodles this time because they're just so simple and quick to do. So if you end up trying it out, definitely let me know how it goes. And I would also be curious to hear about your guys' opinion on whether you prefer like more simple themes or more drawing heavy themes like the one I did last month. So yeah, just let me know in the comments. I would be very interested to hear your thoughts. So again, I just started off with making the outlines of the clouds and then filling them out with the lighter colors. And I did add another border again because I just thought it looked more cohesive that way. And then lastly, I just added the small stars with the gold gel pen again. Moving on to the next page, I'm going to be making some simple sections as always, and I kept the title in the same style as for the habits so that it looks nice and cohesive. And in case you're new to my channel, or maybe even new to bullet journaling in general, this is basically a page where I can plan out my whole month by just writing down any events, tasks, or goals, or anything else that I want to plan out in advance, so that I can transfer it into my weekly spreads later on because I don't create them all at once, but just one at a time. But of course, as always, you can just leave out this page if you don't find it useful, or fill it with something else entirely. Anyway, for the sections, I'm first coloring in the background again with the lighter shades of each color, and I made the first 2 with the peachy shades, the second 2 with the purple, and then the last ones with the pink, just to alternate between the colors and incorporate them all into this spread. As for the sizing, the sections are actually 11.5 spaces wide because of the habit trackers, so they're kind of spaced out a bit wider, and then the height is always a bit varied, so I just kind of eyeball it. And then I'm using the darker shades of each color for the borders as well as for writing the titles on the top. So as always, I'm creating a section for my monthly tasks, my workouts, YouTube related stuff, some self-care ideas, events, and goals. And then lastly, I just added a small gold star into the lower right corner of each section to give it a bit more color. And that is it for these 2 pages, so let's move on to my first weekly spread of this month. So for this spread, I decided on a layout with 8 sections that are kind of offset on the vertical axis. And as for the sizing, each section is 11 spaces wide and 13 spaces tall, with 2 spaces in between them both vertically and horizontally. Now the sections are offset by 8 spaces in my journal, so for the first 2 sections they're kind of aligned at the top, and the next 2 are aligned at the bottom, and so on. And then I'm filling the first section with a bit of decoration, and then I also wanted to write week 1 into the middle, so I covered it again with a bit of washi tape. So I just added a few more clouds again in the background, and then I also added a border all around with the lighter purple again. And then I wrote week 1 with the darker purple and also added the little stars with the gold gel pen. Next up, I created a mini calendar on the top on the right page where there was a bit more space above the section that I was going to add underneath it. And I just used the light purple again as a background for the weekdays as well as for a bit of a border on the sides. And I wrote the dates with the black gel pen again to just keep things consistent. Then for my actual daily sections, I started by coloring in the background for the titles with the lighter version of each color first, and I made sure to alternate between them so that the same color is never actually next to each other. And next I went in with the darker version again to make the borders and also to write the titles on the top. And since I don't really have anything else to add here, I just wanted to talk a bit about a different subject, which is my Etsy shop. And in case you didn't know, I do actually have an Etsy shop where I sell stickers, and I used to make them out of the designs that I made for my bullet journal, so they were basically made out of the themes that I created for it. But for quite a long time now, I haven't really been able to create any new designs for it because it is pretty time intensive and I wasn't really sure if it was worth it, to be honest. So I just wanted to ask you guys if you are actually interested in seeing more stickers for me, because I did get a comment recently that was like about my matcha setup and that it would make a really pretty sticker, which I do agree, but I just wanted to ask if you would actually be interested in that or not. So yeah, just let me know what you guys think in the comments and I can consider making more, or if it's not really worth it and you guys aren't really interested in stickers. But anyway, getting back to the setup, I also added the dates on the bottom of the sections with the gold gel pen. And then for the other sections that were left empty, I decided to fill 2 of them with some more cloud doodles. So the one on the bottom of the left page and the one on the top of the right page. And I just went through the same process, so just making the outlines with the darker shades and then coloring in the clouds with the lighter versions of each shade. And I also decided to add another border with the light purple because I just felt like it made the spread look a bit more cohesive. And then I did the same thing for the one on the top right. And yeah, I really love how this whole theme ended up turning out. I also really love the weekly spread, and I think the colors just remind me of like sweets or maybe just the sunset in general, but a bit more of a pastel version of it. So yeah, this was definitely a lot of fun. And yeah, I would love to know what you guys think of this theme, so definitely leave me a comment down below. As always, I do try to answer every single one of you, and I really appreciate every single comment that I get, but it can take just a little bit of time, so just be patient in case you have a question. For that last section that I mentioned before, I just used the light purple as a border around it to kind of separate it a bit from the daily sections, and then I just wrote the title with the gold gel pen. And yeah, that is it for this setup, so let's do a little flip through. Like I mentioned, I'm really happy with how this theme ended up turning out. At first I wasn't really sure what to do with the cover page, and I was gonna go for a bit of a different design, and I did also experiment a lot with different colors because I wanted to find just the perfect match. But yeah, I'm really happy with how this turned out and I hope you like it as well. So if you did, leave a like on the video and also consider subscribing if you enjoy my content and haven't already. And yeah, that is it for this video, so thank you so much for watching as always, and I hope I'll see you again next time. Bye!